What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be getting into the power rankings. It's been a while since I've done an NBA video, but we are here finally at once. And yeah, it's just time for us to finally get an NBA video under us after all this NCAA videos you've had. If you're into that, I suggest checking those out. I've just made 3 conference tournament predictions, but that's not why you're here. So anyway, let's get into these power rankings. That's going to be starting out with the number 30 team, which is going to be the Rockets at 15 and 45. Have been losing 9 straight, and that's really the main reason. So now the Rockets are the new king, the worst team in the league. Just really not playing the best here in Houston at all. And then if you got the 2 other teams, which is very tight between the Magic, I'm just going to throw them up there. Magic staying at the same spot at 15 and 47. And then the Pistons are going to be jumping up a couple spots at 15 and 46. There you are. Both these teams are, let's just say, they're both bad. They're both trash, but they're better than the Rockets because Pistons, Magic have won 2 straight. They also have a better plus or minus, but the Pistons does have that extra little better record that's really just bringing them over them. It's very tight, though. I could see these 2 teams going either way, but those are the 3 trash teams like usual. And now we're going to stick with a lot of staying here in these next few rankings. Not a ton of movement here, but 27, not a ton of movement in this whole power rankings. I do believe the biggest movement we have is only by 3. So anyway, let's get into number 27, the Thunder, which this team is actually very tight to dropping into that trash. At 19 and 42, have lost 1. They're 2 and 8 in the last 10. Just not a very good Thunder team, but they're still, I think, a little bit more competitive than those 3 teams below them. But they're on the fringe of heading back down to that trash tier like they were earlier on in the year. But right now, they're sticking with it in this bad tier. And then moving on, it's been the same for like a bunch of weeks. So we're going to just kind of zoom through these. The Pacers at number 26, 21 and 42, staying at that same spot. It's basically the Pacers. The plus or minus gives them advantage. They're only minus 2.6. So it says something about how competitive they are, but still, it's the Pacers. They're going to be competitive. That's why they're in this bad tier, but I just don't think that they're going to be like a legitimate team to make the playoffs. So anyway, guys, those are the 2 bad tier teams. And now we're moving on to this in the hunt tier, where we got number 25, the Kings, also a team that's kind of like the Thunder, very close to falling out of this in the hunt tier for that play-in tournament to down into the bad tier, but they're not there yet. Obviously, the Kings, they're 4 and 6 of the last 10 games. You got to respect that by them, but still, the Kings really need to turn things around if they want to make the play-in tournament. They can't just keep going, especially with the Pelicans and how they got CJ McCollum. But we'll see what happens with that Kings team. And then moving on to this number 24 team is the Spurs, San Antonio. There they are. San Antonio, this is a good team, man. This is a very good team. If you look at San Antonio, well, not a good team, but they're competitive. They're only minus 0.1 differential. That is the best. That's even better than the Nets if you take that into consideration. The Nets are 32 and 30. So that is very impressive. That's even better than the Clippers, and they're 32 and 31. So it's pretty impressive in that regard. They're very much like the Pacers, but just better and better, well coached. That's really what they all are. So at 24 and 38, still trying to hang around and make that play-in tournament. But I don't think it'll happen. I think they'll keep trying to be competitive. But you got the Pelicans, you got the Blazers. I would pick them over them anyway. And then, the Pelicans and the Blazers are very tight here. But I'm going to throw them both up. Blazers, I do think, does miss out, especially after that CJ McCollum trade. Portland, I just feel like with Ingram, with McCollum, this team is better suited to go out and make and make the play-in tournament, but it's very close. So you obviously got Damian Lillard. Who do you want to play in the play-in tournament? This Pelicans team or the Trailblazers? I think you would rather play the Pelicans team, especially if Damian Lillard's out there. So if you're a Lakers team, you never know what can happen if Damian Lillard shows up. So that's my stance on those two teams. It's very tight, though. Both of them stay at the same spot, if I didn't mention already. But moving on to number 21 and 20. We got the Knicks. It's been the same for like 4 weeks, I think, now, between these Knicks team and this Wizards team. The Knicks lie at 25 and 36, have lost 5 straight, so Knicks are actually falling. Tempted to put that Pelicans team above them and that Trailblazers team, even though it shows on this tier list, it doesn't. They're not necessarily above them, but if you look at the Knicks, I mean, they're still got the talent. They just got to figure things out there. And I feel like this is a team that they should be able to make the play-in tournament, but they just can't do it. And it's kind of disappointing for them. But number 20, the Wizards, they are very close to make this play-in tournament. Like, very close. They have lost 2 straight, but they're only 2 games back on the Hawks and the Hornets. So it is tight. But it's been like this for a while now. So that's my stance on those 2 teams at the moment. And now we're getting into this play-in tournament. We got the Lakers going to be dropping down a couple spots. LA at 27 and 33. The Lakers, I mean, they're fine. But, like, a lot of people really criticizing on the Lakers. Again, I mean, they're not Wizards bad. I mean, they're not as bad as, they're worse than the Wizards. I didn't mean to say Wizards bad. They're very tight. But if you look at LA, I mean, it's just they got all this talent. Do you want to play this team in the playoffs? No. But, I mean, then again, you kind of do, since you know they're struggling. And LeBron James basically has to put this team on his back, especially without AD. So it's interesting. I mean, does LeBron have enough to carry this team to at least make the playoffs? I'm not quite sure what happens. It's interesting. AD will be back then, but we'll see what happens. And then moving on to number 18, we got the Charlotte Hornets at 30 and 32. And they're going to be jumping up a spot, as well as this next team. These 2 teams are the same record. Hornets and the Hawks. I'm just going to throw them both up there. They're very tight. So Hawks at 17 jumping up a spot. But I just like Young's abilities more than Ball's. That's really all this is about. They all have the same pieces around them. I just like Young more than Ball. It's just that simple when it comes down to this. But it's tight. They have the same record for a reason. Hornets have the slight tiebreaker, I guess, over them. Or just whatever. But the Hawks do have a plus. And the Hornets don't in the differential. So it's interesting. But that's what the Hawks and the Hornets stand. And then number 16, we got the Clippers at 32 and 31. Finally getting to these winning teams. But the Clippers have won 3 straight. They're playing good ball. That's all you need to do, really, in this Western Conference. This is a weaker Western Conference this year than the East. The East is more well-balanced. West has a lot of powerhouses, but they also don't have a lot of good solid teams all the way around, which is the East. But LA, I mean, been the same basically every week as a lot of these teams. I'm going to be saying that with a lot of these guys, but the Clippers, that's where they are. And then number 15, we got the Wolves at 33 and I believe 27, 29. Timberwolves, again, man, this team, finally this year they're piecing things together, and it warms my heart to see this happen because they've gotten all this talent in the world these past couple years, but they've just not done anything with it. So it's finally glad to see the Timberwolves in a good position now. But yeah, so that's where the Timberwolves are at 33-27. Going to be staying at the same spot from. I guess I shouldn't be saying last week. Last power ranking since it was a couple weeks ago. But moving on to this number 14 team, we got the Nets at 32-20. It's finally time for the Raptors to move above them. It's close to the Timberwolves even moving above them. Not quite yet though. But Brooklyn, if you look at Brooklyn, I mean, without Harden, it's still Brooklyn. I mean, KD and Kyrie are going to do their best, but it's kind of very similar to the Lakers, but they're just better. So that's where the Nets are. And I mean, it's just gotten too bad. They're 3-7 in the last 10 games for me to put them below the Raptors at this point. And that's where the Raptors are, as you probably would guess from me talking about them. At number 13, going to be jumping up a spot, swapping places with the Nets. 33-27 Raptors seem very impressed with this team, how they've changed this. Really, they weren't doing the best. They were out of the play-in tournament here. Now they're in a very good spot, actually only a game and a half back on the 6th seed, which is the Celtics. So it's interesting. It's very intriguing to see what happens in this Eastern Conference. This Eastern Conference is very tight. Meanwhile, in the West, it's kind of all spread it out, even when you get down to this play-in tournament here, where it gets a little bit closer. And then those 5 or 6, the East is just very scrunched together, especially 1 through 6. So that's the play-in tournament tier for now. You love all these teams; they're good teams, but they're gonna all be fighting their way to maybe win a couple games and be into that tournament. So we'll see what happens. But moving on to this playoff team tier. And that's going to start out with the Cleveland Cavaliers at 36-25, dropping down a spot. I mean, if you've watched my power rankings by now, you know I'm just not going to jump on Cleveland. I have to see if they're going to win in the playoffs. They don't even have any playoff experience. It's just going to be like this all year unless they just go crazy. It's just going to be like this all year. I'm sorry, Cleveland fans. But unless I see them just dominate in the playoffs, I'm not going to move this team into that contender tier. And even though their record might say they have the same, I mean, maybe if they go out, just go crazy, win a lot of games in a row, that's when you can put them in that tier. Because I basically have no other choice. But right now, Cleveland, and probably for the rest of the year, I'm not going to put them in there until I can see them go in to the playoffs. And I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to state my opinion. I don't think this Cleveland Cavaliers team is going to get past the first round against any of these teams. So unless they're like a 2 seed and they get lucky enough to play maybe the Raptors. I don't know. But moving on to this next team, which will be the Celtics. Going to be dropping down to 2 spots. That's not because they're playing bad. It's just really because these other teams in the West are climbing. So that's really the Celtics. You got Tatum, you got Brown. This is a great team. They're close to being in that contender tier. Actually closer than any of these teams in the list. It just had to move some of these other teams above them. But this Celtics team, I can't wait to see them come playoff time. Finally, they've put together a stretch where they're playing good ball, and now they're in this playoff tier and sneaking up on these contenders. And then moving on to number 10, we got the Dallas Mavericks staying at the same spot from last week at 36-25. Luka Doncic, of course. I mean, he's just really good. Let's just be straight up. And Dallas is without Porzingis, obviously that takes them down. These 2 teams next up are very close. They actually came back against the Warriors last night to beat them, which is quite impressive. Dallas sneaking up on the Jazz as well at that 4 seed, but really, Dallas, I mean, it's all on Luka. They got a good solid core around him. We'll see what Luka does. And moving on to 9, the Nuggets going to be jumping up 3 spots. Once they get healthy and they get Porter back, and maybe, I don't know if Murray's coming back. I've got to be honest, I just don't know. But jumping up 3 spots, if they come back and they're healthy, I like them to be a contender. Right now, they're not a contender because they only have Jokic. It's very similar to the Mavericks situation. But who am I going to pick over? I'm going to actually pick Jokic over Doncic, at least right now. Does that mean I'm picking him for long term? No. But right now, I just feel like Jokic is the better guy than Doncic for you to win. So it's very tight between them, not to mention the Nuggets have the slight edge in the wins that they've had. They've won 6 straight, and they're 8-2 in the last 10 games. So quite impressive from Denver. Going to be jumping up 3 spots. I think that's the highest any team. No team ties with that. Just not a lot of movement this power rankings. But yeah, the Nuggets jumping up 3 spots. So now we're in the contender, and I just want to say this contender tier, I feel like we've established this. Unless any of these guys get injured or these teams start to suck or whatever, I feel like these 8 teams are just gonna be contenders. And I don't know if I don't think it's gonna change unless some of those things happen. But yeah, I just feel like these established. Obviously, there's some teams that could jump in the mix. I feel like the Nuggets can jump in the mix into this tier. I feel like the Celtics can. Maybe even the Mavericks, who knows? But at the moment, right now, these 8 teams are just clear-cut contenders. So that's going to start out with Milwaukee. Going to be dropping down a spot. Can't disrespect the defending champs. They're going to be there in the postseason. They have lost 2 straight, so they got to come down for a reason, but I just don't think this team, you got Giannis, you're not going to fall. So the Bucks, right there. And this is where things get difficult to rank between these next 4 teams. And that's going to start with the number 17. It's going to have to be Chicago. Chicago's going on a losing streak, I know. But this Bulls team, they've lost 2 straight. You're going to be dropping down 2 spots. It just needed to be done. It just needed to be done for the Bulls. But it's going to be fine for Chicago. I do think that they're a contender through and through, and I'll stick to that. The Bulls are a great team. They got DeRozan. They got Levine. No, don't forget about Vucevic, Ball. I mean, it's just pretty crazy, the team they built there. And it's going to be a contender, and I think this team has a decent chance to win the championship this year. And then moving on to number 6, we got the 76ers. Going to be jumping up a couple spots, and really, the 76ers have nailed on that Harden trade as of the moment. They've won 3 straight, and that's going to bring them over these Bulls and Bucks, which is big. They're not quite into that top 10, but they're very close. And Embiid, Harden, it was really, I had to see what would happen, and we're in the step where the 76ers team could climb to the 1 seed. Obviously, they got to get up the heat, but I really do love what they did with that trade. At least for now, I think that the Nets won that future. But right now, so far it's working out. If they win a championship, that was a win trade for them. So yeah, the Sixers, very impressed. They'll probably keep moving up, especially if they continue with this. But yeah, the Sixers right there. And then moving on to number 5, we got Utah. Going to be dropping down a spot just because of what the Heat have done. I'm really high on my Jazz. I know it's my team, but I do believe in this Jazz team. And a lot of you might argue, you know what? This Jazz team hasn't proven to win. In the playoffs, I don't care. I mean, they're going to have to prove that. I know that. And I know I said that about the Cavaliers, but they have the experience. Cavaliers don't. The Jazz do have that playoff experience. They've been there 4 straight years, so they do have it. And I feel like 4 straight years, I mean, you just can't just say they're going to choke every year. 4 years of being in the playoffs is a lot. And they're going to gain that experience. They've had their heartbreaks probably every single year. Wait, have they been in the playoffs 5 years in a row? Oh, yeah, actually 5 years, and it's almost about to be 6. So it's interesting, but yeah, the Utah Jazz, my Jazz, they're just very good. I mean, they have won 2 straight. They just beat the Suns and the Mavericks back to back. And it's just interesting to see what's going on between Utah, and I just feel like the rest of the everyone else kind of zoning this team out, kind of counting them out. They're just going to choke. I don't think it might happen. They're in a very tough West. We'll have to see what happens, though. I believe in this Utah team. So that's what they're going to be in the top 5. And then the Heat, 41-21, in representing that East at that 1 seed. Just had to move them right there, especially after winning 4 straight. They're 9-1 in the last 10 games. The best out of any team right now, I believe. Yeah. So you just got to respect the Heat for that. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, this team is going to be ready. It gives you a lot more confidence with Butler, how he carried this team to a championship in his first year there. Now he has Lowry and all these, and basically the same pieces. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Right now, they're my favorites to win the East. Well, maybe not favorites right now. I'd probably pick the Sixers, but it's close. But that's where the Heat are at number 4. And then the 3 teams, pretty easy. But actually, it's getting tougher with the Grizzlies and the Warriors. I'm just going to throw them both up there. Staying at the same spot, it's actually very close now. Grizzlies are only a game back after the Warriors have gone 5-5 in the last 10 games and blowing the lead to the Mavericks last night. Grizzlies have won 2 straight, and they're right behind them. So watch out for Ja Morant and this Grizzlies team. I am going to trust Stephen Curry a little bit more than the Grizzlies. I just feel like that's all it is. And these 2 teams, though, they're very close. Have been staying at the same spot. And the Suns, even without Chris Paul, they still have easily the best record. You can't move them down for that. They have lost 2 straight, so without Paul making a difference. But I think they'll be fine. Right now, they just have a big gap. They have 6 games ahead of the Warriors. I mean, it's just once Paul, I think this team is nearly a lock to be a 1 seed as long as they can take care of these bad teams, even without Paul. So anyway, guys, thank you all for watching this video today. Hope you all enjoyed the content. Comment down below your power rankings. And anyway, peace out.